On October 3rd, 2020, in Asheville, North Carolina, a wealthy real estate developer died of what doctors initially called a sudden heart complication. His eldest son showed no visible grief at the funeral. In fact, he seemed relieved. 3 days later, the family attorney announced that the will had been revised just 48 hours before the death, and the son who expected to inherit everything was suddenly left with nothing. The deceased was Harold Whitman, 68 years old, self-made millionaire. He built luxury mountain homes across western North Carolina, widowed for nearly a decade, known as disciplined, old-fashioned, strict. Harold had 2 children. Daniel Whitman, 41, the eldest, involved in his father's business since his early 20s, aggressive, confident, expected to take over the company. And Claire Whitman, 36, a public school counselor, quiet, emotionally distant from the business world. She lived modestly, rarely attended company functions. For years, everyone in Asheville assumed Daniel would inherit everything, and Daniel assumed it too. But assumption is dangerous when control starts shifting. In early September 2020, Harold began meeting privately with his longtime attorney, Margaret Ellis. Margaret later testified that Harold was concerned about financial inconsistencies, specifically irregular withdrawals from company accounts. When forensic accountants reviewed company records, they found small but consistent transfers into a consulting firm registered under a shell corporation. That corporation traced back to Daniel. The amounts were never large enough to trigger automatic audits, but over 5 years, they totaled nearly $1.2 million. Harold confronted Daniel privately. According to Margaret, Harold told her, "I built something honest. I won't let it be eaten from inside." On October 1st, 2020, Harold officially signed a new will. In the revised version, Claire inherited 70% of the estate. Daniel received a modest trust with strict conditions. The company would not automatically pass to him. Margaret confirmed Harold was clear-minded, healthy enough to understand his decision. 48 hours later, Harold was dead. On the evening of October 2nd, Daniel visited his father's home. Security logs show Daniel arrived at 7:14 p.m. He left at 9:03 p.m. At 6:32 a.m. the next morning, Daniel called emergency services, reporting that he couldn't reach his father by phone. He used his spare key to enter the house. Harold was found collapsed near the kitchen table. Cause of death, cardiac arrest. No sign of struggle, no forced entry. Harold had a known history of mild heart disease. At first glance, it appeared natural. But Claire noticed something odd at the funeral. Daniel wasn't angry. He wasn't devastated. He was tense, as if calculating. 3 days later, when Margaret read the new will aloud, Daniel's face changed. Shock, then fury, because he hadn't known about the revision, and now he stood to lose control. Claire requested a private toxicology review. The autopsy initially showed no anomalies, but deeper lab analysis detected trace levels of digitalis, a medication derived from foxglove plants. In small doses, it can regulate heart rhythm. In higher doses, it can cause fatal arrhythmia. Harold had not been prescribed digitalis. Investigators examined his kitchen. Inside a decorative vase near the window were fresh foxglove flowers. Daniel had gifted them to his father the night before. He claimed it was a symbolic plant, something elegant. But forensic botanists confirmed something critical. The leaves had been crushed, not simply arranged. Digitalis can be extracted from crushed leaves and dissolved in liquid. Harold had been drinking tea that evening. Fingerprints on the teacup belonged to both Harold and Daniel. But Daniel argued he simply poured tea for his father. No proof he added anything. Until investigators discovered something in Daniel's internet history. 2 weeks before the death, Daniel searched, "How much foxglove is fatal?" He claimed it was for gardening research. But gardening doesn't require lethal dosage calculations. This wasn't rage. This wasn't impulsive violence. This was entitlement. Daniel believed the company was his by right, by years invested, by loyalty, by expectation. When Harold threatened to remove him from control, Daniel didn't confront him publicly. He acted quietly. Foxglove poisoning is subtle. Symptoms resemble natural heart complications, especially in someone with pre-existing heart issues. Daniel assumed the old will was still in place. He believed after Harold's death, the estate would transfer smoothly, but he miscalculated timing. He didn't know the will had already changed, which meant he committed murder for an inheritance he no longer had. Karma didn't just punish him, it humiliated him. Forensic analysis of Harold's bloodstream revealed concentrated digitalis levels inconsistent with accidental ingestion. Security footage from a local nursery showed Daniel purchasing foxglove plants days before the death. Margaret Ellis testified that Harold had specifically instructed her not to inform Daniel about the new will, because he feared an extreme reaction. The jury listened carefully. Financial motive, poison research, plant purchase, will revision, toxicology, the narrative aligned. Daniel maintained innocence. He claimed the foxglove gift was decorative. He claimed the searches were curiosity. He claimed Claire manipulated the situation. But Claire never sought majority ownership. In fact, she later announced she would appoint an independent board to run the company. She had no motive, Daniel did. After 9 hours of deliberation, the verdict was read: guilty of first-degree murder. During sentencing, the judge said something that lingered in Asheville for years. You killed a man for something he had already decided you no longer deserved. Daniel tried to secure control. Instead, he secured life in prison. Harold's company continued under new leadership. Claire donated part of her inheritance to financial ethics programs for small businesses. Sometimes karma isn't loud. Sometimes it's administrative. A signature on a will. 48 hours too early. Daniel thought he was protecting his future, but he destroyed it over a document he never saw. If this case made you reflect on how entitlement can turn into destruction, subscribe to The Hidden Truth, because sometimes the most dangerous motive isn't hatred, it's expectation.